Welcome to the realm of heroes and monsters, Storytime, with your host, AP Fuchs. Stories of intrigue, stories of horror, stories of superheroics, stories of monsters. Get ready, the thrill ride begins. Welcome back to the realm of heroes and monsters, Storytime with AP Fuchs, Season 2. This is it, people. This is the premiere episode of Season 2 of the Realm of Heroes and Monsters Storytime podcast. You were with me for Season 1. We were reading from Flash Attack. We did flash fiction, and that was our story time. And those stories, word length wise, were approximately, it ranged on the story, but it was approximately 250 to 1,000 words, because that's flash fiction. So the stories were short, and you got like sort of a taste of something good for the day. But now this season, this year. All right. So this season, we're doing the same thing, of course, in the context of story time. We're telling stories. And yes, the first episode, so that's what we have to do, is we have to go through the layout, right? So here's how the Season 2 is going to go. So basically, we're going to have a brief introduction, just a hello, how are you? Give you maybe an interesting tidbit about life or an observance or something that happened, whether it's funny, interesting, sad, who knows. We'll find out. It's a little, here's what happened this week. And then I ran a poll online pertaining to Season 2 of this podcast. And the question was, after, if you were given a story and you had a choice to hear the story behind the story first and then get the story, or get the story and then get the story behind the story after. And outside of like 2 or 3 votes, everyone opted for the story behind the story after the story. So that's what we're going to do this season, is we're going to have our intro, and then we're going to go right into story time, straight off the intro. And we're going to tell a story. And then after the story, we're going to do a little segment on the story behind the story. And then that's the show. Go to credits. And then, of course, post-credit scene, as we always do. But that's basically it. So that's where we stand. So this year, likewise too, in terms of material that we're drawing from Magic Man plus 15 Tales of Terror, as well as some superhero fiction and possibly some other fiction that has yet to be released to the public. So we're going to kind of mix it up. I will come forward and say that yes, a lot of this stuff is going to be either monster or horror related for the most part, because I don't have a lot of short superhero fiction. All my superhero fiction is long. But yeah, that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to try to balance it out for you guys. And we'll do, some of those like darker stories, and then we'll do like a heroic story, and then we'll do some more darker stories, then a heroic story, and so on. So that's the plan. And we're going to try some new things maybe, especially when we're dealing with this Magic Man book, because there's actually some poems in there pertaining to the whole dark thing, but I'm not sure if I'm going to include them. We'll see. Okay. Anyway, enough rambling. Straight to story time. Welcome to Season 2. And remember, we're doing full short stories now. So we're doing anywhere from like 3,000 to 6,000 words in terms of length. So we're taking full length short stories, like a good half-hour listen at least. So sit back, close your eyes, and here comes the Magic Man. The Exchange. When the strange man approached Barry Snyder, he seemed to have appeared from nothingness. Barry was rounding a corner in the Exchange, the old part of Winnipeg, when a peculiar man stepped out from the shadows beneath an awning and extended a thin hand toward him. "I can make her come back," the stranger said. It took Barry a moment to realize the man was talking to him. There was no one else around. "Excuse me?" Barry said. "I said, I can make her come back." Barry thought for a moment. "Margaret? Is that who he's—" "No." He quizzically eyed the man. The fellow wore a tight-fitting purple suit with white candy stripes running vertically all the way from the collar to the pants' cuffs. Long brown hair hugged his face like a scarf, and a purple fedora without the stripes topped it all off. A wide white feather stood up proudly from the fedora's headband, something similar to the quills folks used to use as pens. The man's clothes reminded him of a magician's outfit, the kind that entertainers wore at carnivals. "Sorry," Barry said, and stuffed his hands in his pockets of his autumn coat. He walked around the man. A weight descended upon him, the reminder of losing Margaret heavy not just in his heart, but all over. "I'm not interested." The words, "bring her back," brought Margaret's memory to life. Barry had dated her in high school and for 2 years after that, while both attended the University of Manitoba. Barry had studied psychology and Margaret was in education. Toward the end of their second year, Margaret announced she didn't want to be with him anymore. He couldn't understand it, what with the talk of marriage and all. Turns out a week later, when he asked some of her friends if they had any ideas as to why she left him, Margaret was seeing another guy by the name of James Fielder. Worse, she had been seeing James behind Barry's back. His heart shattered. Margaret's betrayal haunted him for years until one day he gave up on the hope that, given a miracle, Margaret would come back. This was the very same day he found out Margaret and James got married and moved away to somewhere in the States. The years went on, but Barry never forgot her, never forgot that girl with the blonde hair and dark eyes who he dated for 4 years. But that was just a memory now. Even so, Barry never forgot her, never let her go. Not completely. Not a day went by when he wouldn't look up to the sky and pick a cloud, wondering if, by chance, Margaret was looking at the same cloud somewhere else. Of course, he knew that was impossible. Cloud cover ranged from region to region, so there was no way Margaret, if she was looking at a cloud, was looking at the same one. Regardless, the idea she might be gazing at the same puff of white in the sky was encouraging. It always calmed his heart. There were times when, while in bed, tears dampened his eyes at the thought of her. He never stopped missing her, never stopped thinking about her, never stopped loving her. He was 30 years old now. He was on his lunch break from work and nipped down to the Exchange district for coffee. That's when he rounded the corner and met the man in the purple suit saying he could bring her back. When Barry was 30 paces away from him, the man called after him, "I can bring her back, Barry. I promise." Barry stopped in his tracks and glanced over his shoulder. The fellow looked straight back, hands raised shoulder high in an apparent offer of friendship, his purple suit clashing with the browns and grays of the buildings. Barry turned and kept walking, Margaret's face hovering in the fore of his thoughts. Whenever he thought of her, he always pictured how she looked during the second year of university, so full of youth and eagerness, excited to start a career as a teacher once she graduated. Sometimes he would think about what she looked like now, 8 years later. She would look the same, but there would be a maturity about her, an evident expression containing wisdom from the years. Suddenly, the man stepped in front of him. "I could bring Margaret back, Barry." "How?" He looked over his shoulder. The spot where the man had been standing was empty. How'd you do that?" "Doesn't matter," he said. "What does matter is I can bring her back. You want Margaret back, don't you? You want to be with her again. You can say it isn't so, but it's written all over your face. Your eyes gloss over immediately upon hearing her name. When I look at you, I see her." "How do you know that? How do you know my name?" The whole thing was surreal, like being stoned and experiencing life through a fog. How often Barry had wished someone would walk up to him and guarantee just what this man said. How much he had wished someone would say they would bring Margaret back into his life and assure him their relationship would never end. "I've heard your prayers," the man said. "I can do this for you, if you let me." The man's hands were still raised, open, evidence of trust. Heart beating hard and quick, Barry exhaled slowly, and, for a moment, he didn't care if this was real or not, if he was dreaming or awake. "Who are you?" he asked. I'm whoever you need me to be. I just want to bring her back, almost as much as you. Magic Man, Barry thought. Magic Man? The man said. Well, I suppose that's as good a name as any. Magic Man it is. How did you... The Magic Man offered a warm smile. You don't need to know, but do know that I'm here for you. Barry swallowed the lump in his throat. If this was truly happening, this was his only chance to see Margaret again, to take back what James Fielder stole from him. What the Magic Man had in mind to accomplish such a thing, he had no idea. But, like earlier, he already decided to go along with it, no matter how strange this all was. How do you plan on doing that? How do you even know about her anyway? Barry said. The wind picked up and swept through his thinning brown hair. He smoothed it back down with his palm. Like I said, I've heard your prayers. You wanted someone to make that ache in your heart go away. You wanted someone to simply say, here you go. Here she is. Now go and be happy. Well, I'm that someone. I can bring her back. For a long moment, Barry considered his offer. Perhaps the Magic Man really could do what he said. After all, he somehow vanished from where he had been standing and suddenly appeared in front of him. No one could do that. No one human, anyway. Are you God? Barry asked. It was a foolish question, one that escaped his lips before he could restrain it. The Magic Man laughed. No, Barry, I'm not. And I'm not the devil either, if that's what you're thinking. Which you are, by the way. Barry's spine tingled. He did just think this guy was the devil. I'm just a good Samaritan, the man said, and I want to help you. The man looked him in the eye. What do you say? He extended his hand for a handshake. Barry thought of Margaret and how his heart burned when she said she didn't want to be with him. He thought of the sleepless nights for months afterward, kicking the sheets and bringing his fists down on the mattress, wondering why she left him for James. He never hated her, but was only frustrated by the ever-present pain she caused. He remembered dating other girls and how he ended those relationships because he never felt right, none of those girls ever measuring up to the standard Margaret set. Remembered his all-consuming desire to have her back, anything to ease the permanent pain in his heart. Sure, Barry said. Might as well. I've got nothing left to lose. He took the Magic Man's hand in his. You got a deal. Anything for Margaret. Barry had been here for so long. He didn't know what day it was. Worse, he didn't even know what year it was. Nearly every calm moment was spent regretting meeting the Magic Man, and nearly all moments, even during the searing pain of the Magic Man's torture, were spent thinking of Margaret. It had been a long road. Barry prayed it would soon be over. After meeting the Magic Man in the Exchange, the moment after shaking the Magic Man's hand, Barry knew he made the wrong decision. Yet, it couldn't have been completely wrong, could it? No. This was for Margaret. It was all for Margaret. It would always be for her. That day in the Exchange, the Magic Man led him around the corner and then around another into a back alley. Steam arose from the sewers and the alley was dark, even for the middle of the day. Garbage and old newspapers littered the ground, stirring in the light wind that swirled through the alley like water in a funnel. Wait right here, the Magic Man said. Barry stood and watched the man in the white-striped purple suit squat down before a mound of garbage next to a BFI bin. With a thin hand, he pawed at the pile, pushing the garbage aside, revealing a rusted iron handle. The man turned it to the left, then all the way backwards in a circle. There was a low ka-chunk that echoed throughout the ground. Barry felt the same dull ka-chunk in his chest. His heart skipped. The man glanced over his shoulder and winked at him. Then, curling his long fingers beneath the bottom rim of the BFI bin, the man hoisted the garbage bin up at a 45-degree angle. Then he let go, and the BFI bin remained suspended in the air, without any support save for its opposite end that was still planted on the ground. Before he could finish the thought, The man gestured with a finger for him to come closer. Hesitantly, he neared him. The magic man must have caught the caution of his steps because he said, "Don't worry, Barry. I'm not going to bite you. You're just going to have to trust me. I can bring her back, but we have to go someplace first." Barry stopped walking. "Where?" The man eyed a dark area beneath the BFI bin. "Down there. I need you to do something for me. If you do, I'll bring Margaret back. If you don't, you can walk away now. No harm, no foul, just a missed opportunity." Margaret. Anything for Margaret. I don't want to go with him, but I will. He knew my name. He knew about Margaret. I've never seen him before in my life. I'll take a chance. Might as well. I've got nothing left to lose. Legs shaky, he approached the magic man. He took his hands out of his pockets just in case the magic man tried something, perhaps attempted to rob him. "Tell you what," the magic man said. "I'll go in first. That way, you know I won't try anything." He gave Barry a knowing grin, one telling him he knew what Barry was thinking. The magic man got on his belly and wriggled feet first toward the dark spot beneath the dumpster. When his feet touched the shadow-like patch, the patch swirled as if made of liquid, and the magic man's black and white spats disappeared into the goo. Soon he was waist-deep, and then was gone. Barry stared after him wide-eyed and glanced down the alley, wondering if anyone was looking on. Nobody was around, not even a stray cat. "What am I doing?" he said, as he got to his knees and mimicked the man's movements by going on his belly, wriggling back feet first beneath the dumpster. The bottom of the BFI bin was a mere inch or two above his back, and Barry's muscles ached with fear the dumpster might somehow fall off its invisible support and come crashing down. "Come on, my friend," the magic man said from somewhere beneath him. "Friend?" Barry peered over his shoulder, into the darkness that was the sharp crevice where the dumpster balanced on its rear rim. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath in an effort to calm himself. "Okay," he said. "Here we go." He pushed against the pavement with his palms, feeling the cool syrup of the black goo through his shoes as his feet swam through it. Soon, the thick cold of the goo was against his shins, then his thighs, his waist, his stomach, chest, shoulders, face, and, finally, arms and hands. There was a ka-chunk when he dropped to the stone floor. He knew the dumpster had fallen back into place on the pavement above, the latch presumably locking itself. Darkness surrounded him. That was 6 years ago. Or was it 7? 8? 10? Barry didn't know. He'd been down here too long, in this cave, away from everything and everyone. But it was worth it. It was for Margaret. The magic man promised he would bring her back. "For you," Barry said to the stone floor, drool dripping from his chin. "All for you." The cave was dank, the lighting dim. A flash of pain flared up in his shoulder blades. His forearms throbbed, the absence of blood circulating through his muscles getting to him again. His shoulders pounded in pain, and another film of sweat materialized on his brow. His hands, he couldn't feel them anymore. They were above him, he knew, but as to what position they were in or how his fingers were curled, he hadn't the faintest idea. His wrists were bound in iron cuffs, the cuffs connected to a chain, hanging him by the arms from the stone ceiling. Only his toes touched the floor, all his weight upon them, his toes pulsing with icy pain. He yearned to touch the ground again, stand with his feet flat, and give the strain on his wrists and arms a break. But it had been days since he'd been allowed to do that. Maybe weeks, maybe months, for all he knew. The blood that had trickled down his forearms from the iron cuffs sticking into his wrists had dried a long time ago. At least the sensation of liquid running lightly over his skin wouldn't tickle him anymore. That tickle was, on some days, what he hated most, instead of what the magic man did to him. He was naked, the sweat on his skin causing the cool air of the cave to feel that much colder. He couldn't remember the last time he felt warm. Only when the magic man held Barry's palms over a candle was temporary warmth an option before searing heat took over and agony became his only consciousness. Barry never looked at his hands. He couldn't bear the thought of what they might look like now. He had undergone what the magic called candle therapy more times than he dared to count. The damage to his hands. Despite his curiosity, no, he wouldn't look at them, not even on the rare occasions when the magic man lowered the chains and allowed his feet to touch the ground. On these days, when Barry was unshackled from the chains, he only had a few spare moments before the magic man would push him down and attach a chain to the iron bracelets around his ankles and hang him upside down for an hour or more. Each time he thought his head would explode, the blood rushing and pooling inside his skull somehow now washing away the bone before bursting out of the skin in red glory. Eventually he would pass out, and when he awoke would find himself right side up again. All for Margaret. Barry wondered when the magic man would come again. He wondered when his time in this cave would end and he could be released. He wondered if the magic man would make good on his promise. An hour passed before the iron door sealing Barry in the stone room opened a crack. No light poured in there, for it was only darkness in the room beyond. Barry had never seen darkness so black before. A shrill screech echoed throughout the cave as the rusted hinges worked and the iron doors opened completely. The blackness from the room beyond seemed to swallow what little light there was in Barry's part of the cave. The magic man stood in the doorway, still wearing the same white striped purple suit he wore the first day he met him. The man's fedora, however, was not there, and his long, bushy brown hair hung in locks over his face. In his gangly, thin hand, the magic man held something long and snake-like. Barry knew what it was, and immediately the gashes on his back stung with the memory of pain. "Ready, Barry?" the magic man said. Throat dry, Barry hadn't the strength to speak. All he could do was barely nod. For Margaret, anything to see her, to touch her, to breathe her, His heart ached at what he would think next. "I don't care anymore. Too long down here. I just don't care anymore. I don't want to go through that again. No more. All for Margaret. No more." The magic man walked over to Barry's hanging form, prolonging the anticipation of the torment to come. With a gentle hand, he touched Barry's shoulder, aggravating the half-healed cuts on his flesh. The magic man spun him around so he had access to his back. Barry forced himself to swallow. He braced his body for the impact of the lead beads at the tips of the leather whip's stringy end. Then he remembered he mustn't tighten his body, mustn't go rigid. It would only make the lashings worse. Taut muscles equaled more blood lost when they were torn open. He had to relax, let his body move with the lashings, move and absorb. The magic man cracked the whip, its sound deafening in the small cave. The wind created from the whip's decisive cut through the air fanned Barry's back for a split second before the sharp, stinging slicing of his flesh replaced all awareness. Eyes squeezed shut, Barry thought of Margaret, and for a brief moment began to care again. Began to force himself to endure this torment, just to see her. The whip lashed across his back, and blood trickled from split skin. The fire across his shoulders forced a gasp to escape his lips. He could picture 10 red slashes across his already mangled flesh. 10 slashes, 10 lead beads at the end of the whip's frayed end. The magic man lashed him again. It was all part of the deal. The magic man needed to give pain so he could have the power to make anything happen. "I'd do anything, endure everything, for you," Barry had told Margaret during their final phone call those many years ago, and he meant it. He was proving it now. 10 strikes of lightning struck his back again, and the warm blood oozing from the wounds was almost soothing, like an ointment. Barry gazed down at his feet, his toes straining to take some of the weight off on his arms. On the stone floor, the deep red of dried blood, the evidence of previous beatings, stared up at him. "I'd die 1,000 times just to see you. Margaret, I need this to stop. No woman is worth this." The whip cracked against his skin. He could feel his flesh hanging in ribbons off his back. I need this. I need to give him what he wants so I can see you again. No, no more. Not anymore. Kill me now, I beg you. Please, just please. Each time the lead beads laced across his flesh, Barry's body tensed, bringing more blood to the surface, more blood to trickle down his back, his legs, and pool on the floor. Soon his reactions grew farther and farther apart, the nerve endings of his torn muscles and shredded skin numbed by searing heat and pain. Before long, he stopped reacting altogether, passed out from the hell just handed to him. It was only then the magic man stopped. When Barry awoke, his arms were spread out to either side of him. There was a sharp pain in his wrists, as if they were supporting a half-ton truck. His feet, right across his insteps, blazed with heat. Blood dripped off his toes. The cave was especially dim today. Only one solitary candle was at his feet, a small nimbus around the flame, lighting the room ever so slightly with an orange glow. He inhaled and found himself instinctively rising up on his feet, his left foot over his right, just to breathe. His muscles strained, not just in his chest, but also in his shoulders and arms. Immediately, Barry knew what the magic man had done to him. His heart broke as he exhaled, blood running from his wrists along the underside of his forearms, and then, finally, dripping to the floor. He was crucified. Head hanging, his legs bunched up beneath him, Barry suddenly became aware of the rough wooden pillar running up the middle of his back. The pillar then split off into a lowercase T, running along his arms, leaving only the top of the T for his head. But it hurt too much to raise his head. It was as though someone had a chain around his neck and was pulling him toward the floor. Sweat coating his skin, the dripping blood rolling and tickling him beneath his arms, his sides, driving him mad, Barry bellowed and begged to be released. This was not right. He was not worthy to be punished like this, to be tortured like this, hanging from a tree. Though Barry had shunned God ever since losing Margaret, he now realized why he was here, why the magic man was putting him through this. At least a partial answer, anyway. Finally, Barry knew what love was, what lengths a man was willing to go to be with the person he truly loved. What a man over 2,000 years ago did for people who turned him away. Barry knew he was not worth it. He wasn't God's son. He wasn't on a holy mission to save the lost. Suddenly, he wished he was already dead. He deserved that, death, and not being put to the test the same way the Son of the Most High had. Help! The effort of exerting his voice sent a sharp pain through his chest. He tasted blood. He tried to spit it out, but there wasn't enough moisture in his mouth to do so. Panting, he tried calling out again. This time his voice was weak, desperate. Help! Somebody help me. After all those years of thinking he had nothing left to lose, he was now begging for his life. The magic man was in another part of the cave, somewhere behind that rusted iron door, no doubt ignoring him. Barry would give anything for another brand of torture, just not this. Help, Barry said, his voice barely audible even to himself. The pain in his arms, his legs, his chest, tore at his muscles. Then fiery pain took him, and he saw no more. Wake up, Barry. You're done. A voice. Who was there? Where was he? I said to wake up, Barry. An open palm slapped him across the cheek. He barely felt it. Barry blinked open his eyes and squinted at the bright light of the candle. For a brief moment, he thought he was upside down again, but then he realized the teardrop shape of the candle was upright. The flame was held before his face. Beyond its glow, the magic man grinned. What? Barry wheezed. You're done, the magic man said. He smiled this time, his cheeks rising up in wrinkles on his face. Done what? What did I do? His mind quickly felt like it was floating on a sea of mush. Only fragmented memories of blazing pain and unscratched itches and unrelieved tickles filled his mind. The magic man brought the flame closer. Barry felt its heat. You're done your time with me. It's over. Margaret, Barry barely managed. That's right, the man said soothingly. You can see her now. He waved his hand to somewhere off behind him. She's over there. The words not sinking in, the disbelief that all the pain, all the torture, was finally at an end took him. Barry allowed the magic man to help him to his feet. Standing on rubbery legs, Barry glanced down at himself and in the candle's faint glow saw his legs were covered in bandages. Same with his arms, his body, everywhere. A few red blotches dotted the bandages, blood from the wounds. There was a little pain. I gave you some morphine to help make moving about easier. Just mind your step. Take it slow, the magic man said. And, of course, a special touch to aid in your healing. Barry wasn't sure, but he thought he heard the magic man add, physically, anyway. His dry throat made swallowing an effort. Why? No questions, please. I just needed to make you suffer, so I could come through on my end. The magic man took a step closer, his mouth at Barry's ear. His breath was hot and smelled awful. She's waiting. Go to her. The magic man gave him the candle, its shaft thick, hot wax running down its length. A bony finger pointed into the darkness across from them. After all those years of pain, the hot wax dripping onto his hand didn't bother Barry. Not wanting to spend any more time with the magic man, he wandered into the darkness, the candle lighting his way. He checked over his shoulder only to see the man was gone. Nothing but pitch black, a black with an odd depth to it that made it seem to go on forever. Out of the darkness, the magic man called, "Keep going, you're almost there." There was a pause. "You're welcome." Barry continued on for a long time, wondering what the magic man meant by Margaret being over there. His walking seemed to go on for an eternity, each moment tainted with the memory of endless years of pain. The silence of the dark void was suddenly broken by sobbing. Barry hurried towards the source. It wasn't long before he found Margaret, hands bound above her head in shackles, hanging by a chain, her body red with blood. Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing that little tale. It was the first Magic Man story that I wrote. But the story behind the story. So, it's not a really huge, long explanation for it, but what I wanted to do was, I wanted to create a villain who was just pure evil, and at the same time, an alluring evil, an evil that you feel compelled to go to. And we all have that in our own lives, right? This dark thing that we're drawn to for whatever reason, and whether we give in or not is up to us. But the point is, I wanted to create that kind of character where you can't help but be drawn to him. But why? Because of the promises, right? And I wanted to also kind of, with this story, and remember, I wrote this a long time ago. At the time, the Saw movies had come out, and the concept, of course, is how far are you willing to go to live? And then, if you've seen those movies, what ends up happening. But here, for this particular story, what I wanted to do is I wanted to make it horror. I wanted to make it bad news, because I was really going for that whole horror idea where just nothing works out, and so I thought, okay, I'm going to create this bad guy, and he's going to offer people something of their great desire, and he will always deliver on that promise. He will always deliver, but it will come at a price. And when he does deliver, it's not what you expect. And that's the important part, was that last part, that whole, when he does deliver, it's not what you expect. And that's, as a writer, especially back then when, I'd be honest with you, my head was a little thick, but I wanted to do something brilliant, right? That, because every young writer, they always want to try something new with the genre and do something brilliant to become this brilliant mind and get famous for that. No. And yeah, that's what I was back then, but not now. I'm definitely not now. But the point is, so I wanted to take this concept, but then twist it so that the reader as they're reading that story, they're going, okay, this sucks for this guy. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's horrible. And there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Literally, in this story, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And then, oh no. And that makes the magic man that much worse, right? Because yes, he put you through hell, and then yes, he delivered, but not in the way you wanted. And that was the point. I wanted the magic man's fulfillment of his promises. And you'll find this in other magic man stories to come, that when he fulfills his promise, there's always a cost. Not just the cost that the person has to pay, but then on the outside, but a cost they have to pay on the inside. And that is what he is all about. And that's why I turned this one story. First, it was meant to be a standalone. I did a deluxe chapbook for it, just on its own. But then I liked the character so much, I thought, and I got some other ideas, and I thought, okay, you know what, we're gonna run with this guy, and we're not gonna overdo it, make it overkill, where every other story is about this bad guy. But every so often, he's gonna show up, and he's gonna cause some trouble. So that's basically the story behind the stories. I just wanted to tell a tragic story where there's hope and there's pain, and we know from life sometimes, we have to go through pain to get to that hope. But in this case, it's hope, and then, oh crap, maybe it was hopeless after all. So yeah, it's kind of sad, kind of dark, but at the same time, that's where I was at as a writer, and that's why I wrote that story. So that's the story behind the story. So yeah, thanks for tuning in for that one, and next week we'll have another story with another story behind the story. So we'll see you then. And welcome to the first post-credit scene of the Realm of Heroes and Monsters Storytime Podcast Season 2. So, what are we going to talk about in the post-credit scene? I don't know. To be honest, like, what do you guys want to hear? I want, these post-credit scenes are meant to be a little bit of fun, a little bit of extra. But here's one for you. And this is a common question, but I'm going to ask it. Do you believe in aliens? I'm talking, intelligent life, aliens. I'm 100% convinced that out of all the planets in all the cosmos, we could at least assume for sure that there's at least some form of living organism on that planet, whether that's like some sort of amoeba or some sort of bacteria or some sort of virus, something alive that's just very, very small. So I'm for sure on that one. And those things would be alien, right? You brought them to Earth, they would be considered an alien thing, an alien bacteria, an alien virus. But in terms of like humanoid life, like kind of people like us or similar, I do. I think they're very far away, and I think that it only makes sense mathematically. I mean, if you take all the galaxies in the universe and you break down those galaxies into what they contain in terms of stars and planets, and then you consider the vast amount of moons, and some solar systems have more than one sun, like all these different aspects, I think our problem as people like looking for alien life on other planets is we tend to look for life like us. Carbon-based life forms need oxygen, maybe food, maybe water, depending on how they're going about it. The point is, though, we're looking for like another human race. I'm very much summing it up and putting it succinctly here, but that's basically what we're doing. And I think we need to be open to the possibility that whoever these other people are, that they don't function like you and me. Maybe they don't need to breathe. Or if they do, maybe they do it through a different way, and maybe they don't breathe oxygen. Maybe they breathe carbon dioxide like trees, like who knows, right? Or maybe they breathe a substance, a gaseous substance that we're just not on our periodic table, but it's on theirs, Same with like even how they look. I mean, maybe we're missing them because they're like ultra tiny. Maybe these people are like a centimeter tall and they're running around on this giant planet, right? Or maybe they're just so huge that we're mistaking these visuals in outer space for something else. Maybe we're thinking they're mountain ranges when really it's a guy's shoulder and he's lying down. Like, who knows, right? So, yeah, I think we need to kind of fine tune our lens a little bit and see what happens in that respect, and stop looking for human life like we do in the movies and stuff, and just look for life in general. Look for movement in general. Look for some form of organized, lack of a better term, genetic structure, so to speak, of any sort, and we're going to find something different if indeed they do exist, because it's going to be alien. So what we're going to find is going to be alien to us. So anyway, that's just the very, very kind of rambly / short way of saying, do I believe in aliens? Yes. Do I believe that there's other human-like people out there? Most likely, but I think our view on trying to find them is trying to find another like an habitable planet that's like ours, when in reality, I think out of all those planets, out of all those galaxies, we're talking billions and billions and billions and billions of them. Yeah, they probably function on a different living system, like life-sustaining system than we do. So let's start looking for that. Let's start coming up with some ideas. Let's start brainstorming, even if the ideas are outrageous and wild, because you know what? It's an outrageous and wild universe we live in. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to this ramble, and we'll see you next episode. Peace out.